Hello and welcome to another episode of the Revenue Revolution, sponsored by Jointflows. Today we have the honor of being joined by Izzy Bishop, head of brand at Wiser Elite, and apparently Beyonce's biggest ever fan as well. How
Great.
are you, Izzy?
Thank you for putting that in. That was not a request from myself at all. But if she's listening, then that is completely true. I'm good, thank you. Great to be here.
Brilliant, awesome. Well, look, it's great to have you here. Obviously, I've been on the Wiser Elite podcast recently as well, so it's good to return the favor and
Yeah,
ask you the question now, and
feeling a
and
little bit
start grilling
nervous.
you a little bit. How
Shows
do I
I'm
feel this?
hurt. Don't like it. Not being in control. Not asking the questions.
I'd be nervous if I was you, but let's see how it goes. Um, awesome. So I guess a good starting point, as always, is to bring our listeners up to speed. I'm sure many of our listeners will know who Izzy Bishop is, but there's going to be some that don't. So bring them up to speed. Who is Izzy Bishop, and how have you got to where you are today?
Who am I? That's a really big question. Well, I am, as you said, working as the head of brand at Wiser Elite. But we were just talking a little bit before we started recording. I've had a really interesting career journey so far and lived like a cat, probably 9 lives. I studied in drama. I wanted to say musical theatre, but I'm the world's worst singer. I'm a fan of Beyonce. I'm not going to say that I am a replica of Beyonce because I definitely can't sing. But I did drama, went to drama school, always saw myself going into the performing arts industry and being on stage, TV, but I'm not sure if you're aware, it's a really difficult career to get into. So after drama school, I actually started presenting a little bit more and doing tons of jobs, working about 7 jobs whilst auditioning and trying to be a presenter, and then landed a gig as a radio presenter on a station in Sussex, and did some few other bits as well. And yeah, I did that for about 4 or 5 years and loved my career in presenting. And I guess one of the reasons why I wanted to get into it and really where it's helped shape me to being in my role at the moment is I just really love learning about people and figuring out what makes them tick, what drives them. So whether that is interviewing Olumers or interviewing you, Hitesh, it's same standard and same level. But it is just really fascinating to me to like find out a bit about people and ask those questions. And it was a huge shift to come into tech sales, not having any background or experience, but wanted to do a bit of a change and actually came across Wiser Elite and Jack Catterall and started speaking to him. Didn't really know what the role was, but I just loved his drive and his passion for changing the way people think about sales and really trying to shape the industry to be a better, more supportive place for people to work. And also just changing the reputation of it's not a white male dominated industry anymore. Sorry that I'm speaking to 2 men, but women are great sellers and we're definitely coming up the ranks. So I've always wanted to do something that changes anything that I'm doing that actually has an impact, and I can go home at night and feel like I'm doing something good. So started at Wiser Elite 4 years ago as a recruiter, was the world's worst recruiter. So apologies if you ever had a call with me. I tried to place a bus driver into a head of SDR role because I thought that she had some great charisma and had managed loads of other bus drivers. So yeah, it was not good at all, but just really wanted to help people. And I think that passion of helping people, bringing people together, really helped me do what I do today. And I sat down with Jack, and I'm forever grateful for that man giving me the opportunity to build our communities. And I said to him, this really isn't for me. I want to do something more creative. And instead of him going, right, well, you're out the door because you're really bringing our reputation down with your skills of recruitment, he said, we see something in you and we'd love for you to take over our communities and build this. So it was a really pivotal moment in my career, so scary because there was no job description. We didn't really know what the future of Wiser Elite would look like in this role. But yeah, I've been in that role now for 3 years, worked from community manager all the way up to head of brand, and that's where I am today.
Nice.
Amazing. Amazing. What a pass. I feel like giving you a round of applause would be unfair to all of our previous guests. So I'll
Oh, you
skip
can
it for
give me.
now.
Please do.
Let's do it anyway, right into the mic. There you go.
Izzy, I've got, well, can I start? Is that all right?
I mean, let's go. I
Um,
mean, we have a tradition where I usually go first, but apparently Mick's so excited he
I
has to
want to
jump
jump
in.
in
So
right away.
let's let
I'm
him go.
really happy to have you on the podcast. Really love what you guys are doing at Wiser Elite. The WhatsApp groups, the events, trying to bring light on like big issues and gaps in the sector. I see a lot of leaders and top voices and people trying to build communities along, maybe their brands, but also their personal brand. Where should you start to be successful at it?
It's a really good question, and I can't tell you that because otherwise you might copy us. No, I'm joking. Do you know what? And I always say this, so many people are really helpful and help speak at our events, and they give their areas of expertise to us. So this is what I've been overwhelmed by in the industry, is the willingness of people to share. Where you start, and I guess just to give you a little bit of context, so Wiser Elite, they do tech sales recruitment, but the other side in the role that I sit within is we have 5 tech sales communities. So we've got SDRs of London, A's of London, retention seekers for AMs and CS, go-to-market leaders that you're both part of, and then also making moves for women in tech sales. So we didn't just one day think, right, we want to start 5 communities and now we've got 3,000 members. That would be a really big challenge to take on. We wanted to start small, and we've grown our communities from them. So how it all started really was people were coming to Jack Catherall, our managing director, and asking him questions about, maybe I'm a sales leader, I'm trying to build a sales team, I'm really looking to understand what salary benchmarking is in the industry. Or he might have a female coming to him saying, I'm the only female in my sales team, I would love to have a mentor and get some support from other women. So instead of him bringing people together offline, he wanted to create a space for people to mentor and network each other. So that's where he created our first WhatsApp group, which was called The Elite. And then since then, we've rebranded that to Go-to-Market Leaders, and we've segmented all of our communities. And I think that really is where our power is that we weren't trying to create a community for everyone. I think often when people are thinking about building communities, they want to go so big and so wide, but actually you're not really going to bring much value to that group of people, because you're going to have a mix of SDRs in there and a mix of sales leaders and account managers, and they're all wanting to learn different things. So I think the first thing that we did is being really specific of, who are we wanting to capture here? Who are we wanting to support? And it actually all really started with SDRs of London that Lewis Gadsden founded. He thought those are the people that were coming into the industry that probably needed the most help. And with that as well, they probably were earning the least amount of money. So we made our communities free for SDRs. And from them, all of our communities, they are and they always will be free. There are communities out there that are brilliant, but they do charge. And I think when you charge and you're making that barrier for people to join, but also you're kind of segmenting against those people that are working for smaller businesses and not necessarily being as inclusive. Yeah. I think that was one of our biggest things, is being free and putting the members at the forefront of everything that we do. And then really it's just about networking and trying to find people that are really passionate about the work that you're doing. So you mentioned Jack Nico was on this podcast recently. He actually was one of our founding members of SDRs of London. So we brought him, and Will Gay, who previously was at Cognizant, now he's set up his own venture. Lewis brought them together and said, right, can you help us? You guys have great networks. We want to create this. Let's work together. Yeah. And I think that's really helped our network grow, but also they get a lot out of it as well. So for all of our communities, we have community hosts that are essentially champions for spreading the word of what we do. But it also means that we're staying super aligned to what reps actually want to learn. And it's not just myself sat there at home going, I think people want to learn about XYZ, because otherwise all of our webinars would be about Beyonce. So that's probably to help people in tech sales.
That's great. And I was saying offline that I'm part of quite a lot of groups now, like small communities, whether it's on WhatsApp, whether it's on LinkedIn or Slack. And I genuinely find the GTM leaders channel on WhatsApp to be the best one in terms of actually learning stuff. And if you're stuck, like, people go and organically ask a question, and you always have, like, I don't know, 7 to 10 answers coming in within an hour.
Yeah.
Which is incredible, because it feels like the group doesn't belong And maybe that's the point of it. It doesn't belong to Wiser Elite, you know, it feels like this is actually the UK leadership group of people.
Well, it's really interesting you say that, and thank you, because that is one of the things that we really don't want to be pushing out Wiser Elite. We've created 5 new brands. They all have their own LinkedIn pages. They've all got their own logos, their own colors. They're powered by Wiser Elite, but often people don't really know that we're the business behind that. And you might be listening to this thinking, well, that's pretty stupid, because then people aren't going to know where to find you. But I think that has just really made us quite authentic. And the fact that we are trying to help the industry and help bring people together and level them up through the communities, but also through our events and our networks, we're not doing it as a team of recruiters that are trying to use this as a poaching platform. Myself and Zara, who sit building these communities, we don't let our team use that list of people as their network to go after for clients or for candidates. And I think if we did, people would smell straight through that and go, well, why would I want to be part of this community? So that is really, really important, that it doesn't feel like it's from us. It actually feels like it's for the members, and the members are the people that are leading it. And of course, I could say that's always been like that. Definitely, we've put a lot of work behind the scenes, and we've had to work really hard to get it to the point that you mentioned there, Mick, where you feel like it's not really us leading the conversation, it is you guys. But I think that's been one of our biggest focuses, is that we want to make sure that our members are at the forefront of everything that we do. And we also listen to them. Like you've mentioned WhatsApp, there are communities that are on Slack or on different forums, and they're phenomenal. But within tech sales, I think WhatsApp seems to be the most engaged platform that we found. And then I think also the last point, sorry to keep going on, but one of the most important things of building a successful community, and something that actually somebody had a call with me about recently, saying that she wanted to do one, is make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. So somebody came to me saying, I want to build a community because I want a talent pool of candidates to speak to. That absolutely is not the right reason. If you're doing it to try and benefit your business in that instant revenue way, you are going down a really messy path. It's probably not going to work, but it also might bite you in the end. And we've been investing in our communities. We've invested over £500,000 of our own money into this community, and it's for a long time not made any revenue back. It's been a huge investment for Wiser Elite, but it's really, really helped us down the line. But it has taken quite a while to get to that point where we're starting to see it as a revenue machine through sponsorships and things like that, because we've always made it free. So people might look at us thinking that's really silly, but it has really helped our brand grow. And it's been something that, had we not have had the support from our leadership team, we wouldn't have been able to do.
Yeah, amazing. To Mick's point, I echo that. I think we individually at least have got so much value from these WhatsApp groups. So you guys are doing a great job. And my question is kind of a good follow on from what you've just said over there. I think some of our listeners might be wondering, you know, you guys have successfully set up 5 different communities, to your point, very tailored and very focused on specific areas. So, you know, the GTM leaders, SDRs, et cetera, et cetera. What advice would you give to someone who wants to set up a community because they want to genuinely give back? Like, what practical steps can they go through to be able to achieve this?
Because they want to give back by helping other people learn?
Yes.
Right. So yeah, I think that's the first thing. The first step is like really understanding, well, what do you want to help people learn? What is your area? What is the aspect that you feel like you would be able to help people increase their knowledge on? And then just be really clear of, okay, that is your North Star. That's where you're trying to get to. You're going to make sure that all of the content that you're putting out is aligned to that mission. And I think the first thing to start with, as I mentioned before, is reaching out to people in your network and asking for support. Community is not one person, as you've mentioned, Mick, like it doesn't feel like it's from Wiser Elite. So really utilize your network. Bringing people together to build that community is going to be so powerful and really help you. I would definitely try and work on your personal brand. I have really put a lot of effort into trying to make sure that I am on everybody's LinkedIn feed, probably to my friends' annoyance. They're like, do you actually work, or are you just posting all the time? But LinkedIn is so powerful, and just commenting on people's posts, liking them, reaching out, messaging them, but doing it from a really authentic way. I don't reach out to people and say, hey, I'm looking to sell a sponsorship to you or anything like that. It's more like I want to meet you, to learn from you, and trying to give back. And I think if you're doing it in a really like authentic, lovely way, where you're trying to actually learn from people and just being a bit inquisitive, then people are gonna help you. You've heard this phrase of adding value, and don't always ask for things, like give people things. And especially if you're trying to give value to people through building a community, if that's what you're interested in, then giving them something. So sending them to an article that you wrote, or a blog, or a podcast that you found really interesting. And then, yeah, really understanding like what medium do you want to be on? Do you want to be on Slack? Do you want to be on WhatsApp? Communities don't have to be on a chat. It can just be a mailing list. You can have a newsletter. You could do a couple of events. But so really understanding like what area do you want to sit in within communities, because it's such a broad scope. And then my biggest advice, if you're doing this from a business perspective, is just be aware of the investment that it does take. People can do communities on the side of their job, but if you're really wanting to drive this forward and take put a lot into it and get a lot out, you really do need to have a whole designated team. Before I stepped into this role, Lewis was doing it on the side of his role. He's still involved in it. I still work alongside him. Like, could not do it without his support and the support from all of the other leaders internally that I'm working with to drive these communities. But it definitely is a full-time job. So making sure you have the time to set aside. And then I think also my last bit of advice, and something that I learned when I first started in this role, is try not to automate things. So it's really easy in the world of AI, and where we're also time poor, to make things so automated and send mass messages out and not actually have that personal contact. I truly don't think we would have been as successful as we are if we didn't message every single person individually. I have every single member, our 3,000 members' numbers on my phone. I speak to every single member. I've messaged them all personally. I welcome them all individually. Zara, now our community marketing manager, and the rest of the team do that as well. So we're personally saying, hello, Hitesh, like, thanks so much for joining GTM Leaders. We'll add you in. And that's not an automated message. That is one by one. And I think with that manual approach, it's so much longer, but it just really builds that relationship with the people that you're working with, so that they actually know who you both are if you're building that community, not just who are these people that are spamming me.
Yeah.
Great advice. I feel there's going to be some SDRs in sales tech who are going to be after your phone after that, Izzy. 3,000 contacts they can sell to. Gonna have to keep that phone safe.
Yeah. I was gonna ask you a question, because you said that when you first started your role, you didn't have a job description per se. It was kind of like a blank canvas. What would the job description look like now? Like what? So the question, I mean, what's driving the question is, how do you measure success? Okay, there's a number of members, but like, how do you make yourself successful? What does good look like? What doesn't look too good? And then like, if you were to write a job desk, what would this include?
Good question, because for us, good doesn't look like the amount of members that we have. Jack and I sat down when I first started in this role, and we were really clear that we did not want to be a community that had 50,000 members. We are really happy with 3,000. I still think that's actually probably too many to really have that personal relationship with everyone, but we would rather have 3,000 members than 50,000. But 3,000 super engaged members that are coming to all of our events, that are speaking in the WhatsApp group, that are asking questions, and not just dormant. It's really difficult to measure success when you're speaking about communities, because if you are not a member that is speaking, that does not mean that you are not an engaged member. You could be sat there reading the WhatsApp group, getting so much value and learning so much from what people are saying in there. But it's really difficult to track that, because you might think, oh, this person's never spoken in the 3 years that they've been a member. They must hate it. And then you meet them in person and they're saying, oh, I absolutely love all of the content that you're putting out. So one of the things that we do in terms of measuring that engagement, and that to us is what is success, is event signups, webinar signups. We send to our mailing list. We send newsletters, so making sure that we're tracking what actually the viewership of those newsletters are and the click-throughs. And then we will do surveys as well once a year to really understand what our community members are getting out of it and if they're happy with the stuff that we're putting in there. So that to us is success. And of course, things like follower growth on LinkedIn. I was just having a look through, and we've just hit a couple of milestones for our followers, and it's great to see them grow. I mean, from SDRs in London, we've now got over 7,000 followers, and we've got 42,000 followers across all of our communities and Wiser Elite brands. So it's just been great to see that grow over the past 5 years. But in terms of my job description, it's really varied. And I think I'd struggle to write my job description, but it has really changed. Now I've got Zara working with me. She focuses more on the communities and the event side of things. My role as head of brand now is to work on the sponsorships, getting brands involved. We just had an event with G2 this week, but also the Elites, which is our awards arm. So I massively focus on that. And also the branding side of things. So doing things like our Sales Unfiltered podcast that we had Hitesh on, and hosting all of our events. And that has really helped us create more relationships with people that will in turn help the communities.
That's good.
Awesome.
I've got just one because I just thought about this, but
shall I just leave, Mick? Because you seem to be asking all questions.
Leave it. I've got this.
I can leave you to it.
Finding that on the podcast.
So I'm desperate to be in my community, so that's why I want to speak about it. Right? And I've been failing at it. But your success essentially, because you've got your groups they're kind of interconnected. So you're like SDR, moving into AE, moving into leadership, and then you're essentially stealing. Well, maybe not stealing, but there's a transition between the groups.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see it being potentially a problem eventually, because then you've got overlaps between those communities as well, and then you have to take people out from one to then put them into another one? There's like some sort of promotion, graduation process happening. Maybe I'm just thinking this through way too.
No, it makes sense. So when an SDR gets promoted into an AE, they need to leave that community.
Yeah.
I don't see it being a problem. I see it actually being something that's really nice. We're trying to create a bit of a journey for them, and that we can support them throughout their whole life cycle of their career. We have members that are part of multiple groups, especially where we've got Making Moves, which is for women in tech sales. They might be in that community, but then also be in retention seekers because they're a customer success manager. So I think that support is really lovely, and they get different things. So we have a real different focus and almost like a whole new business case for each community. We've got a different tone of voice. We do different style of events. We know what works for those members. So like we did a really creative event for SDRs in London a few months ago called Take Me Outbound, which is a play on Take Me Out with Paddy McGuinness. It was around Valentine's Day. We wanted to do a speed dating event. So we got everybody to come into our office. We decorated it with love hearts. We got everybody in partners, and people were a bit confused. They were like, can I come to this if I am in a relationship? And I said, yes. That's a whole nother business that I'm working on.
Wiser Elite, breaking up happy homes.
Yeah, trying to bring people together and create relationships for salespeople. No, but that was a really fun event where they did speed dating and they did the elevator pitch, and then we went off into breakout rooms and we spoke about injection handling, and it was a really, really a great event, because what we're trying to do is not just doing panels where people are just sitting and listening to somebody speak for an hour. We want people to take value away from it and actually feel like they've learned something. But we probably wouldn't do a speed dating event with go-to-market leaders, for example. So we know what really works for those members. But yeah, it's a lot of admin in terms of, to answer that question, if somebody's moved from being an SDR to an AE. But what we say is, if you've moved on, or you're not wanting to be in this group anymore, like, you can re-register through our sign-up pages, or you can just drop us a message and we'll remove you. So I don't think it hinders us, but it is something we've come across. Hitesh, do you have a question for me?
Thanks, Izzy. I'm glad someone's giving me the time. I think a good segue actually is we've touched on communities quite a bit, and then we've kind of touched a little bit on events as well, which you guys are great at throwing to your point. Before we hit the record button, we spoke about events and how you can actually utilize that from a business perspective in order to drive revenue, drive opportunities. And, you know, I agree with you. I think that some people are like, oh, man, you know, they might work at a company like, oh, I got to go to this event because basically my VP of sales told me I got to go. So I'm going to go and tick a box, but they just loiter around, don't really do anything, add any value. Talk a little bit to that. How can you use attending events to drive business outcomes?
Well, if you want to join our A's of London community, we have a whole recording because I did a webinar about this. So I can send it to anyone interested afterwards. But no, it's a really good thing. And I think a lot of people are starting to go to more events, but maybe feeling quite reluctant that they have to. Our team also attend all of our events, and we sit down and we do a lot of event training with our team to make sure that we're not just there to show them where the wine is and make sure that people are getting checked in, that they're actually using it to help themselves as well. I have a whole event cadence for how I make sure that I'm getting the best out of them, from pre-event to during the event to post. I won't talk for too long on this because this could be a whole episode probably, but I think some of the key things to think about before the event is, if you're hosting the event, obviously you have the sign up list. So looking through that sign up list, connecting with people, dropping them a message saying, hey, noticing you're coming to our event that's happening in a couple of weeks. Would love to grab a coffee beforehand so you meet them, or I'll keep an eye out for you at that event so we can catch up. If you don't have that list and you're going to an event, then look on the LinkedIn page of the company that's posting that event and see who's liking it, see who's commenting on it. That's probably a really good gauge to see who will be attending. Or if it's an expo, I always go to the Sales Marketing Innovation Expo every year, seeing who's exhibiting and starting to connect with those people and just asking them like, hey, Mick, will you be at this event? I'm going to pop along. When would be a good time to come and say hi? The most important thing from that, because I have so many faces to remember and names through the events that we do, and there's nothing worse than somebody coming up to you and going, hey, Izzy, and I'm like, and I'm only human. I can't remember every single person's name, but if they're somebody that I've spoken to and I've said I'm going to say hi, I'm taking a screenshot of their LinkedIn and I'm keeping it on my phone. If you've watched Devil Wears Prada, have you seen it? I know I'm speaking to two guys here, but come on, humor me.
Sure, why not?
I haven't, sorry.
Shocking. Okay, well, both of you go do your homework, watch Devil Wears Prada. They have a scene where Anne Hathaway is giving Meryl Streep all of the names. They do this event, Meryl Streep, she's too important, she's too senior to know any of the names or the faces of the people that are at her party. And Anne Hathaway has had to read a whole book and look at the faces and memorize. And then she whispers the name in Meryl Streep's ear and says, this is Hitesh. That's what I do, is that I memorize and try and remember their faces. Then during the event, I go up to them, I'd say hi. If it's in our office, you might see me walking around giving a tour. It's just a really nice way of not just having such small talk and asking about the weather. Also trying to introduce them to people. So if they've spoken to you before that event and they've said, oh, I'm really interested in learning about XYZ, and you know somebody at that event is really great at that, then bringing them together, again, adding value. It's really making them think, she's actually listened to what I've said, and she's trying to help me. So then I'm going to help her down the line. It's the best thing, because I think sometimes it can be really difficult to have that small talk conversation and there's only so many things that you can speak about. So bringing other people into that conversation, it also makes you look a lot more educated and a lot more networked within the industry. It gives you more credibility if you're speaking to people that you've never met before, and then they can also be a champion for you and say, oh, I've worked with Izzy before and we've done work together on XYZ, and it really helps that. And then one of the other things that I would do at the event is taking selfies. Don't know if you two like a selfie, but I think that's a really powerful way, or just taking pictures. If they're speaking on the panel, taking a photo of them. But if I take a selfie, I'm sending that to them the next day going, love this picture of us, how cute, or posting on LinkedIn and tagging them in it. And then they really have to respond because they cannot ghost you afterwards. If you are listening to the panel, taking a ton of notes, writing a post afterwards, tagging them, they'll feel their ego is stroked. They're like, wow, that's amazing. And then just that post event, just making sure that you're touching base with them and following up, because it's so easy to meet people at an event, forget who they are. I also, on LinkedIn, if somebody connects with me, it's really easy to then leave and forget who they were, and you have to try and search them and you can't find them. Screenshot their LinkedIn page so you can remember, oh, I spoke to that person and that's the person that I said I'd follow up with. Because it is quite hectic when you're at events and you meet lots of different people. but just trying to be a bit organized with it and having a bit of a plan and almost a target for yourself, thinking at this event, I want to speak to 5 people and I want to get something out of it. And then it just is really kind of BD, isn't it? Instead of an event to get drunk. So
Yeah. So I just had one follow-up. I'm sorry to cut you up there, Mick.
no, it's
for
fine.
once.
You've done that lots of times.
I've barely asked any questions, so
I just had one follow-up question on that topic before I hand back to Mick. So great advice, I think, for many of our listeners. One of the things that I just wanted to touch on as well is, I know when I was a lot younger, going to like my first B2B event, one of the things I was tasked with is, okay, we've got to generate some business from this, right? So whenever we would go to an event, it's like, we've invested this much in your ticket to go. It might be a free event, but it's time out of the office. You need to generate leads from it. And people, when I was younger, I used to have a lot of trepidation with that. It's like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Just walk around and go up to some random person and say, hey, how you doing? Obviously I've overcome it now, but what advice would you?
I've seen you at events. So shy, sit in the corner.
what advice would you give to people who are like this, who might not be as comfortable as yourself, as an example, to just approach people and speak?
It's really hard. And yeah, like I can sit here and say all of these things, but it is difficult and not everybody is confident in going to these events. It's been so incredible to see so many of our members coming to these events alone, and shy people that maybe aren't the most extroverted. And yeah, I'm really like proud of seeing them, that they keep turning up and practicing it. So I think that is the biggest thing. It's like, just go to one and see what happens and keep going. Don't feel like, oh, that went really awful, or I didn't meet anybody, I'm never going to go to one again. Like, do keep going, because I think the more consistent you are with it, as anything, it gets easier, and then you'll start to meet people and start to recognize faces, because a lot of people go to the same kind of events all the time. We definitely have members that come to all of our events and are our biggest fans, which we love. And you'll see those people as well. But I think going with a friend really helps. But one of the things that, and I actually like to go to events alone, because sometimes I feel like when I go with a friend, you can get stuck with them. And if you're going for conversations, you can kind of feel like, oh, I don't know, like you want to go off and do your own thing. But I do think if you're new to events, definitely going with somebody to be that support, but being really clear with them, we are here to have these conversations, and almost like challenging each other. People are in sales, they're competitive, they making it into a bit of a game, going, I want to get 3 conversations, you're going to get 5 or whatever. And then just using each other in that conversation. If you feel a bit nervous and you've kind of dried up a bit on what to say, then introduce the person that you've come with and they can speak a bit, and then you can bounce off each other a bit more. But also, to that point, like connecting with people that are going to be there, but then also connecting with people that you think might help you, and people, if there's another SDR and you're an SDR, for example, saying, do you want to meet up and meet for a drink before we go to this event? We have a lot of members in our communities doing that. They'll pop in the chat saying, I'm going to this event, do you want to meet at the pub beforehand, so that they can go together. And that really helps as well. But don't be afraid, and you might mess up, and you might leave feeling a bit embarrassed, but that's absolutely fine, because everybody's been there. And oh my gosh, I've made an absolute tit out of myself at events before, and I've left thinking, why did I say that?
How are we doing for time? I just don't know if we get into a new topic or
Go for it.
Because I want to speak about female talents, and I was at the event I don't know, like a couple of weeks ago, Izzy, and I couldn't help but notice that it was basically me, Hits, and a couple of other dudes there, and the rest was just like female, basically. And I think, to me, this is a big issue, because this needs to be taken seriously by male talents, because it's combined effort, and it has to be bi-directional in a way. So what can we do at our level, at least maybe Jointflows, and then maybe within the sales world, to enable this?
Thank you for asking that question, and thank you for coming to that event, because you're right, it was And that this event that you're speaking about, it was a panel for International Women's Day all around how businesses can attract, retain and support female talent.
Yeah.
One of our panelists, Ash Botton, actually came up to me and said, did you invite men to this event? And I said, funnily enough, I only invited men to this event. But shocking to see that it probably was about a 25% split of male to female. Since I've been in the industry, I've seen the gender split improve, but literally by 1%. When I first started, it was 23% of the industry was women. Now it's 24%. We've still got the gender pay gap. Women earn 26% less than men. And so there's so much work that we need to do. And I think one of the most important things that businesses can do is start talking about this and showing up. And the fact that both of you came to this event and showed a willingness to learn is the first step. And that's incredible. So many people feel like they're not experts in this topic, so they can't talk about it. Even Jack Fisher and Ash Botton that we had on the panel, they are incredible men in the industry. They are such brilliant allies. But at the beginning of the panel, as you saw, they said, I'm a white male. I feel that I can't talk about this topic because I'm part of the problem. And that, to me, I'm really glad that they said that, because actually that, like, honesty and vulnerability for people to listen to two super senior men in the industry saying things like that, and them actually saying, I don't really understand why businesses don't get it right, because it's pretty easy. You just give men and women equal opportunities, is really shocking, because there is still obviously a huge problem. So don't feel like you need to be an expert. Have those conversations, be afraid to get messy and mess up, and you might make mistakes. But I think one of the most important things is asking women in your network, in your business, like what support that they want. One of the most powerful things that's ever happened in my career is the Sarah Everard case that happened a few years ago. Jack Catterall, my MD, he called every single female in the team and just said, hey, this has obviously happened. I can tell that this is just so horrible for every female and any male as well to experience. And it's really made the conversation start about how women are being treated. And he said, can you just tell me what I can do as a male? Give me your experiences, like, let's have a conversation. And we was just really open, and it was just such a powerful conversation that built so much trust with me and him as a male manager, that I now feel so confident that I can speak to him about absolutely everything, even when it's talking about women's health in the workplace, and not feeling like you can, if you're needing a day off because you're on your period and you're having really bad symptoms and you have a male manager and you can't speak to them, having that trust with your manager is so important, so that people feel like they don't need to leave that workplace because they don't feel supported. We do a lot of work around making moves. We created a whole pack, which I can send to you guys afterwards. Don't know if you have show notes, but it's advice to businesses. But the main things that I would say is hiring. So really address like the language that you're using in your job specs. Are you using those more male stereotypical phrases? Are you talking about your maternity packages in your job descriptions? Is it on your website? Are you being really, really transparent about progression and salary bandings? You've heard the stats of men apply for jobs if they only have 1 or 2 of the skills out of 10, but women only apply if they have 8 or 9, because they want to feel like they're worthy of that role. They suffer a lot more with imposter syndrome. There are men that do suffer, of course, but making sure that if you are requiring quite a lot from somebody, like just maybe not putting everything on the job description to maybe scare women off, and giving them that opportunity to come forward and say, actually, do you know what, I feel like I'm right for this role, and then speaking to them and adapting the role to suit them if you think that they're right to hire. And one of the other things as well to be really mindful of is, do not hire females to just be a tokenistic hire. We speak about this a lot in Making Moves community.
Yeah.
Women do not want to be that tick box exercise. The amount of hiring managers that come to us at Wiser Elite and say, I only want to see female candidates, is shocking. And you might sit there thinking, but that's good. It's not good. That means that you're giving women the opportunity when actually maybe a man would be better in that role. So making sure that you're having 50% split when you are seeing candidates, and stopping, like, for example, even looking at Sales Unfiltered, my podcast, like I have 50% men and 50% women on my podcast. I have a lot more men coming forward. I know we've spoken about this, Hitesh, to come on the podcast than I do have women, but I will then put them in season 3, season 4. I have men that I've recorded 6 months ago that haven't been aired, because I will refuse to put out a season unless it's 50-50. So just making your life a little bit harder, but making those difficult decisions will really help, because unless we do that, you're just going to keep adding to the cog of the gender disparity that we've already got.
Yeah,
absolutely. Izzy, you've got so much valuable stuff to say. I feel like we could record another 5 episodes, but unfortunately we can't. So we are at that time now where we do need to wrap up, and we have a traditional wrap-up question over here, which is, through your whole career to date, what is your best memory and why?
Oh my gosh. Thanks for giving me this before. I mean, I have 2. Sorry.
Go for it.
But from I guess as a manager, my best memory is seeing Zara, my community marketing manager, pass her probation. She's absolutely smashing it. She's been in the role now for about 7 months, and she is just flying. I get such a kick out of being a manager and mentoring and helping her progress in her career. So that's been incredible. And then in terms of myself, I would probably say launching the Elites that we did last year. It's our awards night for people in tech sales. We went from 100 over 100, which was an awards evening that we put in our office, to creating an awards night for 350 people, black tie, 3-course dinner evening. And we really pushed ourselves and nearly killed ourselves to do it. But it was just such a proud, rewarding moment, standing on that stage, hosting the evening with Morgan Ingram and seeing it all come together. And I think that is probably like my biggest advice that I would give people, is like, push yourself, put yourself out of your comfort zone, try new things. And it's definitely how I think we've grown to where we are today, is that we're always striving to be better each year. And the Elites is happening on the 30th of May this year, and we're going even bigger. So definitely living up to that. Fingers crossed it's just as good.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much again for joining us. I'm sure our listeners are going to love this episode. This has been the Revenue Revolution podcast, sponsored by Jointflows. Until next time, bye everybody.
bye bye.